Part 1. The hypocrisy of the Republican Christian right. The Republican Christian right claims to champion morality, family values, and fiscal responsibility. Yet their actions reveal stark hypocrisy, exploiting child labor, punishing immigrants, and serving the elite. From Alabama lawmakers allowing children to die in unsafe jobs while pushing punitive immigration laws, to Melania Trump's alleged unauthorized work being ignored, their hypocrisy is as glaring as it is dangerous. These policies don't just harm the vulnerable, they harm America itself. Amnesty for undocumented immigrants would inject $1.5 trillion into the economy and stabilize Social Security. Meanwhile, detention centers cost taxpayers $850 billion over 10 years, serving only corporate interests. Let's examine how these contradictions hurt families, workers, and the nation. The cost of detention versus amnesty for profit detention centers are a massive drain on resources, costing $850 billion over 10 years. These facilities, operated by corporations tied to Republican donors, profit from dehumanizing immigrants. By contrast, granting amnesty would save $1.5 trillion over the same period, money that could fund education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Amnesty also addresses America's labor shortage, providing a path to legal status for undocumented workers, allowing them to fully contribute to the economy. Yet Republicans reject the solution, preferring policies that serve corporations while dividing Americans. Social Security. A solution. Republicans ignore Social Security faces a funding crisis as fewer young workers support retiring baby boomers. Instead of addressing this issue, Republicans deport workers, block immigrants, and deny pathways to legal status for millions. This approach is not just cruel, it's counterproductive. Undocumented immigrants already contribute $12 billion annually to Social Security without receiving benefits. Legalizing their status would stabilize the system for future generations. By rejecting amnesty, Republicans risk collapsing a program they claim to protect. Alabama's child labor hypocrisy. Alabama lawmakers have been at the center of shocking revelations about immigrant child labor. Reports show children as young as 12 working dangerous jobs, including factories supplying major U.S. companies. Some have died due to unsafe conditions. These same lawmakers, who turn a blind eye to child labor and exploitation, are pushing the Laken Riley Act, a punitive immigration law named for someone killed in Oregon, far removed from Alabama. The irony is glaring. How can Alabama Republicans claim to care about protecting lives while allowing immigrant and American children to die in unsafe jobs? Their selective morality reveals a disturbing agenda: profit over people. Melania Trump. A double standard. Republicans demonize immigrants as illegals, yet conveniently ignore Melania Trump's alleged unauthorized work in the U.S. While on a visitor visa, Melania reportedly took modeling jobs without the proper permits, a clear violation of immigration law. Despite this, she was granted citizenship and celebrated as First Lady. Meanwhile, immigrants who work hard in agriculture, construction, or caregiving are vilified and targeted for deportation. The double standard is clear. Laws are for the poor and powerless, not the wealthy and well-connected. Part 2. Dividing America for the elite. The Laken Riley Act. A weapon of division. The Laken Riley Act, championed by Alabama Republicans, tears families apart under the guise of protecting children. The law separates undocumented parents from their U.S.-born children, devastating families while feeding the for-profit detention industry. The act is named after a tragic case in Oregon, far removed from Alabama's jurisdiction. Why are Alabama lawmakers, who ignore child labor deaths in their own state, using an unrelated tragedy to push punitive immigration policies? The answer is clear: to further their agenda of division and exploitation. The American Families Act. Ignored to protect the elite while pushing the Laken Riley Act, Republicans block transformative legislation like the American Families Act. This bill could lift millions of children out of poverty, yet Republicans dismissed it as a socialist handout. Instead of helping families, They prioritize tax cuts for billionaires and subsidies for corporations. The cost of the American Families Act is a fraction of what detention centers cost taxpayers, but Republicans refuse to fund it. Their actions expose their allegiance to the elite over everyday Americans. Child labor and for-profit prisons, Republicans frequently tout their commitment to family values, yet their policies tell a different story. Immigrant children in Alabama work in life-threatening conditions, often in jobs that benefit major corporations. When these children die on the job, Republicans remain silent. At the same time, they push laws that criminalize homelessness and poverty, funneling vulnerable people into for-profit prisons. These facilities, often owned by Republican donors, turn human suffering into revenue streams while furthering the elite's agenda. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and intellectual elitism figures like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy highlight the intellectual elitism driving Republican policies. Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is a vehicle for privatization, dismantling public programs while enriching corporations. Meanwhile, Musk's companies thrive on government subsidies, a hypocrisy his defenders ignore. Ramaswamy, posing as a populist, pushes policies that strip protections from workers and expand billionaire influence. Together, Musk and Ramaswamy reveal how Republican elites exploit the working class while pretending to serve them. Doge. Privatizing public services, the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Musk, claims to cut $2 trillion from government spending. Yet it targets programs that support the poor, health care, education, and Social Security, while protecting wasteful spending on detention centers and corporate subsidies. Amnesty could recover $1.5 trillion of that $2 trillion, but Doge ignores the solution. Their agenda is clear. Prioritize the elite while harming the vulnerable. Faith is a weapon for greed. The Republican Christian right weaponizes faith to justify policies that harm the poor and marginalized. Yet these actions betray the teachings of Christianity, which call for compassion and care for the vulnerable. Donald Trump, who sold autographed Bibles to supporters, epitomizes this distortion of faith. The same people who decry moral decay rally behind a man whose actions contradict every Christian value. Their faith is a facade for an agenda driven by greed. A call to action. America deserves better than this hypocrisy. Amnesty would save Social Security, inject $1.5 trillion into the economy, and strengthen families. Meanwhile, detention centers cost $850 billion and enrich only the elite. Programs like Doge claim to cut waste, but they ignore real solutions in favor of policies that harm the most vulnerable. It's time to reject the false morality of the Republican Christian right and demand policies that reflect justice, equality, and compassion. Let's expose their hypocrisy and build a nation that values people over profits.